Tameem, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking at your face a lot, editing a lot of videos throughout the month, but this is how we're officially capping off our, end of a month of coverage on Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. So it's nice to have you here, man.
No, man, it's been great. Thanks for creating all that stuff. Like, it's kind of awesome for us to see that.
Oh, we just wrote articles and edited videos. You're actually making a game, but have you been following the coverage? Do you read comments, or is there anything that really stands out?
I've been reading it all, and anyone that tells you they don't is probably a liar, right? No, it's good. I think it's encouraging. It's a bit different from the last time we did a big press push on a game. That would be Devil May Cry, I guess.
What feels different about it?
Well, I think it's just that we don't have. I think just that we're coming at it fresh with sort of an idea that we felt was interesting, and it's hard to know whether it would be interesting to other people or if people would find it, I don't know, pretentious or just a boring subject to tackle or something like that. And actually, it's been really nice to see people be genuinely supportive and interested in at least the idea of tackling, the AAA market or tackling mental health. That those are interesting things to tackle. So that's cool.
Have you seen any reactions that have been surprising for you?
I'm always surprised when I see when I read, or encouraged actually, when I see people that say, I have suffered from mental health, and I'm fully behind a game trying to portray it.
Yeah,
like that because I must admit, like when we started this game, I thought that it'd be mostly the opposite. That it would be mostly people saying, shouldn't be making this game.
Right.
But the other thing I'm encouraged by is just, I think, the idea that, the idea of developers being independent, making games, trying not to do the big budget stuff and get games out that, that are smaller and cheaper, that there's sort of I think an appetite for that people feel like, yeah, I'll give that sounds like a good idea,
Yeah, I think your studio's garnered enough goodwill along the ways. We've seen so many comments where like, hell yeah, Ninja Theory, do what you want to do. You guys are cool. Is there anything you want to clear up? Anything you see out there where it's like, I don't think they quite have the correct read on this?
I guess the one thing that did kind of pop out that I thought, oh wait a minute, like it wasn't in the Game Informer comments. It was some like people saying, well, why do all Ninja Theory game like characters have tribal paint, and why she got dreadlocks? Isn't that cultural appropriation? And it's like, well, actually, in this case, she's a Celtic Pict, so that's why they're called Picts, because they're pictorial. They have tribal paint on them, and they put lime in their hair, which created kind of clumps that look like dreadlocks. So, it's like we're trying to be, just all that baggage doesn't really count.
Gotcha. Yeah, just like the paint over eyes. It seems like maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but it seems like a artistic trend lately in a lot of fiction is to have the characters with the paint over the eyes. I mean, you look at like Mad Max Fury Road, or even Death Stranding, Kojima's new game, or there's another one. Oh, PB in Mass Effect Andromeda. Why do you think it's become a weird zeitgeist artistic trend?
I don't know. It might just be one of those things like 3 buses arriving at once or something. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Sure. Well, hey, to start off, some people wanted to take a look back before we focus too much on Hellblade. Rob the Butcher was wondering, he writes in, he says, the only game I played of yours is Enslaved, and I gotta say, it was really good. And then he asked the age-old question, how was it working with Andy Serkis? How did he contribute to the studio during that development process? Would you willingly collaborate with him again? Or unwillingly, actually.
It was really fun working with Andy. Like, Andy's... Like, he's so nice. Like, he's as nice as he seems in his interviews and stuff like that. And and you know how I met him was pure chance and accident. It was because my brother was doing his mortgage, and I slipped in a trailer for Heavenly Sword and said, "Why don't you ask him if you'd like to get involved in games?" And he
Really?
gave me a call, and he then called he he put us in touch with Weta in New Zealand. He arranged that whole thing on Heavenly Sword, so we all flew out to New Zealand for 6 weeks. And all of us, not just Andy and us, but all the cast and crew, everyone. We just came out of it great friends. We were just having fun, hanging out, and then when we were on set, it was like he knew how to work with actors, he knew how to work with story, he knew how to manage and run a crew. Like he's a master of what he does, and like we wouldn't be doing half the stuff we're doing if it wasn't for him.
That's wild. And to think that it was all just from a mortgage. And
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
sure, your brother's like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
seems like crossing some weird boundary that I don't want to cross. But it turns out it paid off.
If you don't ask, you don't get, I guess, is the lesson. But yeah, that was serendipity.
Yeah. And what do you think about? It just seems like he's so entrenched within the Disney family now, with Star Wars and Marvel. What do you think about his bizarre rise?
I can't believe how much he works. Like he's in everything, isn't he? He's
Yeah,
like
officially.
he's running his own studio, that mocap performance capture studio in London. He set that up. They're making games as well, and he's doing films, CG films, like his own films and other people's films. I just don't know how he does it. He was in some Marvel films, I think, as well, and
Yeah.
as well as Star Wars. I just don't know how the man does it. He's like a machine. It's really awesome, inspiring. I'm far lazier than that guy. I wish I had his energy. Like
Did you ever reach out for him to play Senua? Was ever on the table
yeah,
there?
yeah, no.
Let's see. So Jacob BG42 asked a simple question: Are you more of a Bayonetta guy or a Devil May Cry guy? I assume
I
this is
have
Devil May
to
Cry
say,
One.
I have to say Devil May Cry. I mean, but they both have the same spirit, don't they? They both have the same DNA. They're both awesome games.
Do you enjoy playing
But yeah,
stylish action games? Did you play like Bayonetta 2, for example?
no, I did Bayonetta 1. Um, I don't know why Bayonetta 2 skipped. I skipped over that. It wasn't intentional. But I think in terms of the character, I have a I grew up playing Devil May Cry, so I have more of a connection with Dante. Like he's the man.
Underdrinker is just asking in general, how has working with Capcom changed the way you guys make games?
I think Capcom was really. I mean, every game we do with every publisher, we learn a huge amount and it changes, and I think that shows in our. I think the quality of our games. They might be different, but they get. I think they get better. Um, Capcom, working with Itsuno-san in particular, who was director of the Devil May Cry franchise, or at least Devil May Cry 3 and 4. Um, he like he's someone we look up to. Like he has such an eye for responsiveness of controls, for um, letting the player express themselves with the controller and the character. So we would talk right down to animation frames, single animation frames, milliseconds to get the touch and feel of combat feeling good. So what he brought was just that ultra attention to detail, like the kind of precision that you get from Japanese action. That's what we took away from it. It's really awe-inspiring to work with him. I mean, he also used to be a school teacher, right? He used to so the way he taught us was really great. He was never dictatorial, going, you must do this, you must do that. He was like, Capcom themselves, they didn't touch a line of code or a single pixel in our version of DMC, but the input, the advice was invaluable.
Is there
Yeah.
anything concrete, any just perspective, just one sentence lesson that he imparted that changed the way you look at action games, or is it just a matter of having a very fine tooth comb over every detail?
I mean, one thing he said, kept saying, is that if you think if the player, if you, the player, thinks you should be able to do something, if you try and do something, the game should support it, right? So it's not us as designers that we set the rules of what we want the player to do or not do, and then it's up to the player to figure out. It was more about, at least on Devil May Cry, it was more about, well, if you think you can, whatever, parry and go into this and do that and this, and you try it out with the controller, let the player do it. Let the character respond and do it, even if it doesn't look right. Even if it's odd to go from this frame to that frame. It's better that you give the player what they want to do than to try and achieve visual perfection. So
Right,
gameplay
right.
over necessarily what the animators would want it to do.
Yeah, for sure. I know while visiting the studio, I kissed your ass a little bit, not being a Devil May Cry guy, but playing DMC and just absolutely loving the amount of creativity you guys packed into there. And we
Mhm.
made some quick reference to it, but I'd love to focus on that plan mission in particular. Because everybody always brings up, like, Raptor News Network boss fight and, like, the inverted lake and stuff as levels, but that plan level was so great, just having the blueprints actually rendered in the world as they're theoretically laying out the mission of how to invade this tower. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about the design of that and how that came about?
I don't know. It's like, some a lot of the ideas just come about like late. Like, they're not planned at the start sometimes. Like, we knew we had this big mission to do, and the most boring part of story and cutscenes is the exposition of what you have to do. You have to do this, and then you have to do that, and you have to do that, and you sort of go, well, how do we make that not someone talking?
Yeah.
And I honestly don't know where the idea came from. It could have been me, it could have been someone on the team. I honestly can't remember, but I remember once that idea surfaced and someone said, why don't we treat the whole thing as a flashback, as some kind of, like, the plan that's being drawn turns into the level that's being played. And it was like, wow, that sounds cool. How do we do that? And then someone goes away and tries out some stuff, and then it looks cool, and then we go, let's change the story around this idea because it's worth it. And I think in an action game, like an adventure game, I think our job is to try and surprise people level to level. So every time we go into a level, we think, well, what's different about this? Like, what's new about this? Why is this different to what's before, right? And if there isn't anything different, you just know you've missed something. You've missed a trick. There's a key missing. I don't know. That's how I think of it. It's like there's always a key to every scene and to every level, and you just got to find it. And you know when you've got it because it just all falls into place when you do. And when it doesn't, you usually end up just struggling. Like, the gameplay feels repetitive, or like visually it feels dull, or it derivative, or in gameplay it feels derivative, and it's usually because you've missed this one key. So you just go into it going, there's a cool idea here, even if you don't know what it is, we have to discover it.
But how much of game development is somebody saying, God, wouldn't it be cool if, and then someone goes away and tries typing it up and working on the code and just realizing, like, technically, production wise, we just can't pull this off with the schedule we have. Isn't that just over and over again, the mantra?
Well, like, I never buy that excuse, right? Often often I think these ideas come about because you don't have time left to finish something. Like to do it in a normal way or conventional way, you'd have to put too much in, and you'd still probably not have something interesting. So sometimes you bring together an idea like the plan thing. Actually, it made a lot of things simpler. Instead of having cutscenes with people telling you what to do here and there all over the place, it meant that with that one device, like all we needed was like some cool visual effects and some voice, and we could explain what was a really complicated setup. That I wasn't super confident that we could explain to people, without some kind of map.
Right, right.
So
Gotcha.
sometimes these ideas are actually there to streamline or simplify an idea, um, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it spectacularly goes wrong. Um, but more times than not, as long as more times than not, it pays off. You're good.
Right on. Well, hey, to shift over to Hellblade a little bit, McGee Lee says, you've stated before that you want Hellblade to be more than just a game, but an experience. With that in mind, do you have certain themes and or metaphors that may sometimes come to mind, but be too on the nose for what you want to do with them? Yeah, how much of this game are you thinking in terms of metaphors and kind of working through other issues through Senua's journey here?
Yeah. So I mean, the question is phrased as you want it to be more than a game, an experience. I mean, which sounds potentially, pretentious, but it's not meant. That's not. I don't think the game is trying to be pretentious. I think what the game is admitting is that it's a story experience. It's a story based experience, and as long as you're good with that, it's a good. It'll be a. That's what the game is. It's not better than a game. That's what the game is.
Okay.
Um, in metaphors, yes, there are metaphors in the game, all kinds of metaphors. But one of the things about psy- psychosis is that a lot of the things that we think of as metaphors are, in fact, incredibly literal to people suffering from or experiencing psychosis. So, for example, when kids go, "There's a monster under my bed," or "There's a monster in the cupboard," like it's almost universal. Almost every kid says that at some point, and they if they can't see it, they can sort of sense that there's someone under their bed, a monster under their bed. Read an account by someone who had schizophrenia, who said that when they were a kid, they saw a demon under their bed. Like they could see the demons coming through the walls, like in the bedroom. And they just assumed everyone could as well.
That's why people are talking about monsters so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is talked about metaphorically is made literal. So in Hellblade, a lot of the things that are we would maybe think of as metaphors, you would see them. She would see them.
Gotcha.
And that's cool. That's what fantasy I think actually is.
Yeah. Jaded Gamer asks something in that vein. He says, how will the player know that Senua's perception of the world is different from the quote unquote real world if the real world is never shown to the player?
Ha! That's a great question. And the reason it's a great question is because it's probably the biggest lesson I've learned making this game, which is at the start of development, we were all talking about reality and, how do we know what's real and what's not real? By the time we've spoken to service, people who have experienced this kind of condition, and Paul Fletcher, the Professor Paul, who you met, where what became very clear is that there is no objective reality that we experience, right? So the idea that there's a real world and one that is and one that isn't real is sort of nonsense when you think about it. The only probable thing that is objective is probably mathematics because it's sort of irreducible and universal. But and physics comes from mathematics, so that too. But in terms of our experience of the world, we are constantly hallucinating our own realities, and some of us, your reality is not mine, it's not his or hers. And to some people, it goes to much more extreme levels, and then we draw a line and we call them psychotic,
Right.
right?
Right.
But there isn't. We're playing the game through Senua's reality. For her, these things are real. They will kill her. There is no real world other than her real world.
So it's not going to be a matter of like during the credits, the camera's going to fly around and show what was really happening the whole time or anything like that.
No,
Okay.
no. And take some time to think about your reality. and consider whether the things that you actually see, hear, and do and believe are real, because they might be real to you, but they're probably not real to someone else. And they will be asking you, well, why can't you see my reality?
Yeah, if you're freaked out right now watching or listening to this, just think this is what Tameem has been living with for the past, 3 to almost 4 years, like working with Professor Paul Fletcher, incredibly smart guy. He will freak your shit out. You
Yeah,
will leave
yeah.
questioning
I feel
everything.
like in that. I feel like I've taken the blue pill or the red pill
I think you
in
both, and you just
Matrix.
kept cramming them in your mouth. Yeah.
Taken too many pills.
LA, the ambassador of GI, as he claims it, is wondering, we've seen in previews that the player's perception can be altered, specifically the flames in the woods. My question is, how often will these events occur? Are they like set pieces, or is it a more dynamic element in the game's world?
So stuff like, sorry, repeat that last bit. So stuff like flames and stuff like that appearing in the world.
Yeah, he's wondering if that's going to be dynamic, or are all the kind
Oh,
of stronger
yeah.
hallucinations, is that all part of a set piece type?
Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, there's some set pieces, but it's also just there all the time. It's like the voices that the Furies, we call them, like the cacophony of voices, are pretty much always there. And sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not. There's things like when you're running through like you might be running through a forest, and then you start noticing that the trees only move when you move, and you don't know why, and you might try and figure it out. Or if you listen to the waves in the ocean, they might morph into the sounds of screaming people or suffering. And it's like all this stuff we're taking care to put into the game so that it feels like things are constantly um, like strange and like sinister, untrustworthy. Like you can't trust your senses and stuff. And then occasionally it goes into full blown set, intense set pieces. But the idea is, or the goal is, that everything you hear and experience is always puts you on edge because you know that something's wrong all the time.
Right on. And I think the tree example is a great one for kind of, yeah, it's set piece ish. It's interesting, but it is dynamic. It is based on what the player is doing. It's not an event that happens all the time. But there's never going to be situations where sometimes you walk through that forest, or sometimes you walk up to the ocean's edge and you don't hear that and the trees don't sway, right? Like it's just in this area, the trees will always sway.
Yes,
Okay.
but you'll probably miss it.
Right. Well, not if you
There's a
listen to this
very good
interview.
chance you'll miss it. And that's okay. It's just if you notice it, you've discovered a secret. You've discovered a secret about the world, which may or may not mean something.
Sure.
And that's over and over. That's sort of well, over and over. That's what people tell us their experience is like when they're um, when they're experiencing psychosis. That things mean they find strange meaning in the world around them, and they hear things that are significant, important, that stand out, or they see branches that move, and they're sure that that tree is not moving because of the wind, but because it wants to. It's trying to say something to you. Like it's very strange.
Gotcha. Next Gen Warrior is wondering, Hellblade seems like a game that intends to deeply immerse the player in the experience. In what ways have you tried to design the game to be more immersive? I think you've already listed off some of them, but do you have
Yeah,
other little
I mean
tricks to?
that's a massive. I mean that's a broad question. It's very
Yeah,
difficult to answer. It's all the pieces of all of the above coming together in a way that's not is basically our job.
uh-huh. All right, so everything. Well, here, this might get the ball rolling a little bit. Torum is wondering, I was wondering how the music is going to enhance the atmosphere you're going for in this game. Is the music going to only play during key moments? Will there constantly be a soundtrack?
That's a good one because like the intention is that you hear the world through her ears, through her mind. So if you start putting stuff like a soundtrack, like in a movie, it sort of removes you from her, right?
Right,
Because now
right.
you know that there's some composer. Hans Zimmerman has done a wonderful composition and accompanying the action, and you know that you're playing a game or watching a film. Whereas what we want to do is make everything subjective. So there's a lot of sound in the game, but it's more like soundscapes. And when there's music, they feel more like the music feels more like the memory of music that she's heard. It's like the soundtrack of her mind. Um, it's more like remembering a song than it is playing a song. I guess one exception might be during combat sections where it's full on combat and you're fighting all the Viking warriors or what have you, where it's tribal. And but then even that, I think, is still in keeping with that idea that she's heard the drums, she's heard them chant, and it's playing in those moments.
Gotcha. That's an interesting way to look at it. Andre Filafranca must be a fan of your dev diaries. He's wondering, why did you guys change the combat mechanics? Directional attacks and defense would have been great, which is something you showed off in a very early dev diary. But yeah, why the evolution of combat and the way that you've evolved it?
Well, we went. I think this is what we wanted to show in the dev diaries is that you like in game development, like you try a bunch of stuff and sometimes you change direction and mechanically it was interesting, like doing directional blocking and directional attacks. Um, but maybe this is our failing, but we couldn't make it like fun. We could make it intellectually fun, but not. You didn't feel the fight. Like it felt like it felt robotic. It felt like you were a robot following straight, like very artificial designer rules. Block up, attack, attack left, attack right, block up, whatever. Um, and it felt soulless.
Yeah.
And no matter how much work we put into it, we just couldn't break away from that feeling that we're at a dead end.
I'm curious now, did anybody on the team play For Honor, which is also very much going for that directional combat? And I think it largely pulls
No,
it off.
no. This was probably a year before.
No, yeah, for sure. But has anybody played it now and thought about that direction again?
No. I think for better or worse, and I think for better, we changed direction, and the game's been getting better and more interesting for it. And there's no, once you break away from the fact that you have to stick to a quadrant of mechanical stuff, it opens you up to do all kinds of different moves that are much more organic, um, um, and sets you free to kind of, I don't know. I think the fight flows better.
Yeah.
As a result.
Especially like fighting multiple enemies, I'd imagine that'd be a huge hang up for that focused directional combat.
It's just a little weird, isn't it? I don't know. I mean, for us, it felt a little weird.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong for Honor.
Yeah. Mindfu is wondering, did you guys have to cancel any big ideas or features that you had during development due to trying to keep the budget low?
Yeah, totally. I mean, all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
that is, in fact, what we do for a living, is cut out all the cool ideas we can't do due to budget and performance and stuff like that, and try and come up with cool ideas that we can do. So even the stuff like wanted to have a big cast of characters in the game, a reasonable cast of characters in the game, like we did in Heavenly Sword and DMC and such, and couldn't afford it. We could afford to make one character, so we designed the game around one character. But it goes on and on and on. I'd like to have had more enemies, more bosses. Like this, it's endless. The amount of stuff you have to compromise in one way, but then find cool solutions in another way. So yeah. I think that's the art of making stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Dat Boy Peepo is wondering, what do you guys think of God of War 4? Doing the focus on narrative instead of gameplay approach and changing combat to an over-the-shoulder, deliberately paced, vaguely Dark Souls-y type of thing. Have you guys looked at God of War 4 much? I know we made a joke about it in the rapid fire
we saw the
thing.
announcement, like the playthrough of the announcement, and yeah, it did have some similarities, like similar camera, Norse mythology. And I think I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think, like when you're making a game or anything, like a movie or whatever. Like there's always going to be a game. There's always going to be a game or several games that come out that are similar. It's unavoidable. I remember even on Kung Fu Chaos, we thought, okay, what we're going to do is multiplayer, four-player melee combat, but we're going to do it over big moving sets, and it's going to be awesome. And no one's doing that. And then Power Stone 2 came out, bang in the middle of it. We were like, oh man. And then on Heavenly Sword, actually, it was like, let's do a single camera thing, so you don't have to mess around with the camera, and it's a single rail camera, evade on the right stick and stuff like that. And then God of War, the original God of War, uh, uh, came out around the same time or just before, I can't remember, and it had the same control. And so this has happened every single game we've done, and I think it probably happens to every single person that makes games. So I think I think it's I think it's cool. I think in a way it sort of goes like, well, we wanted our things to be more intimate. They want it to be more intimate. More intimate means more story. They want it to be more story. Like I think it comes from a similar place, which is how do we get you closer to the action, closer to the characters, and I think it's cool. That's gonna be a massive blockbuster game. We're gonna be a smaller game that's probably you know more intimate about in terms of characterization about mental health and stuff like that. They'll be different enough that I think it's not a we're not running for the hills quite yet.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that several game developers out there are thinking like now is the time in the video game industry to get more intimate. Now we think we can pull this off. Yeah. And I wonder if it's an influence. I mean, drawing it directly to The Last of Us might be too easy of a line to draw. But do you think there's anything there?
Yeah, but then other people were going, well, The Last of Us looks a lot like Enslaved, our game, and it's like, well, when we were doing Enslaved, everyone was going, well, Enslaved looks a lot like Uncharted, so it's like, well, and then when Uncharted was out, they were going, well, that looks a lot like Tomb Raider, like
right,
it's just endless.
Games look like games.
Yeah.
So in the rapid fire interview, which again, thank you for doing. That was very stupid, and I appreciate you being a good sport. But in it, you said that the studio's working on 4 projects, and there's a lot of speculation about what that meant. There's a NeoGAF thread where a lot of people were like, "Well, they're going to be all mobile things." Can you rule out that you guys are working on any mobile games?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're not touching mobile. Like,
why is that?
Bargepole. It's honestly, it's a really bad place, like show really. Like the people that are making successful games on mobile are people that are spending hundreds of millions on marketing, on acquiring users, and then monetizing their users. It's just a different space, and everyone else. Like there's so many games coming out every single day, and you might as well just chuck them out the window. Like there's not getting any traction. People aren't paying for stuff. It's just not a great place.
Leo Franco on Twitter, I don't know exactly what this means, is asking, is their project that they're working on, other than Hellblade, Senua Studio?
Oh, okay. So when we did our demo with Epic at GDC and at SIGGRAPH, where we showed our motion capture technology that we've been developing.
Yeah.
It got a lot of traction. So we won a real-time live award at SIGGRAPH, and that was awesome. That was up against a lot of big players like Pixar and ILM and stuff. And so we announced Senua Studio, which is like, it's not games related. It's more like, well, if somebody wants to do a concert, say with a virtual character like Hakune Miike, but real time.
Yeah.
Or virtual production or stuff like that. We've got this tech now that we can do this stuff in. So we set up as a division that's just like, come to us for this stuff. So people have been getting in touch about various things like either adverts or interviews with real-time characters and stuff like that, and we'll see where that goes. Like, it's not really my focus.
Gotcha. So they come into the studio then to like record in your mocap space?
Yeah, or we can ship, or we can we can go off site and do it, because I mean we did the GDC demo in San Francisco, we did another one in Germany at FMX, and then we went to SIGGRAPH, so we can take care of all the logistics and technical side of things, and create characters and stuff, and help make things for TV or movies or stage shows. That's the idea.
Okay, gotcha.
But we were thinking about using it for Hellblade as well, because now we've got Melina and Senua characters. Like, there's no real reason we couldn't do live Twitch streams with Senua, you know?
That's, I don't want to tell you how to market your game around launch, but that sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
Or just make her the next J-pop star. I mean, can't be that hard.
yeah, totally.
So is
I had
that
a singing voice though?
so? Just to be clear, though, for Leo's question, is that one of the projects that you guys are working on? You consider that one of the four?
No, actually, no.
Okay.
No. That's just another thing. Like the other projects. I mean, they vary in size, and they're like exploring very different ideas. Like, they're not big projects like DMC.
Okay.
So they're smaller projects of different sizes. Yeah, but not as small as mobile.
Okay, cool. So a lot of people asked about it, not even in relation to Hellblade, but what are your thoughts on the Nintendo Switch? I remember at the studio you conveyed that you're a big Nintendo fan. Have you played much of it? Does the studio have thoughts on
I
it?
don't have it, unfortunately. And I haven't been playing games for quite a long time, like actually in the last few months. I think the last game I really sunk my teeth into was Inside, and I only played it because I knew it was short, because I'm just trying to get this game, wrapped up.
Pro tip, you should check out What Remains of Edith Finch. It's also short. It just came out. It's very, very cool. I think it'd be up your alley.
Right. Okay, cool.
So you haven't played any?
I thought Inside was a masterpiece.
Oh, yeah. It seems also very up your alley. But no thoughts on the Switch? Are you interested in Nintendo's direction?
It looks great, and I'm going to get one, and then I'm going to after Hellblade, I'm going to just take a few weeks or maybe even a few months off and catch up on everything. Yeah, I think it looks. It's Nintendo, right? So it's like it's the hardware, it's the software, and you can only get those Nintendo games on whatever Nintendo. I don't, you can only get their games on their platform, so I'll get their platforms and play their games, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah. Did working on Disney Infinity open the studio's mind to more family-friendly projects in the future?
What it did was it opened us to. I mean, I don't think we would come up with a family-friendly project.
Okay.
I mean, do I look family-friendly? I don't know. But do any of us? No, I don't know. That's not fair, actually. A lot of people in the studio have kids and stuff, so it could happen. I mean, maybe I quite liked that Henry thing in VR. That was really.
Oh yeah, the little film.
Yeah, so I wonder, maybe VR will be quite a good place for that kind of Pixar-ish type experience. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Let's see. Yoda's Llama, strange name, asks simple advice. If someone wanted to start an indie game company, what advice or suggestions would you give them?
I'd advise you don't do it. And if you still, and I'd keep advising you to not do it. And if you still feel like you want to do it, then you should do it.
It just takes that willpower to force through.
It takes a lot of willpower. It's like it takes over your life. I mean, you gotta. Well, okay. Let me be more practical than that, right? So, and this is based on my own path, which is I really wanted to make games, and to do that, I worked my ass off on programming and art and doing a showreel, and I got a job in a games company. I did that for 5 years as a programmer, as a designer, and I learned how to make games working alongside people that were awesome. And then when I knew, or I thought I knew how to make a game, I set up a studio with people I trusted that I'd already worked with alongside I knew were awesome. And I think that's great. That's a good way to do it. It's almost like you learn the ropes in a professional environment if you can. You find the people that you love and that you can spend 5, 10 years without being at each other's throat. It's super important. And then I quit my job, and I didn't have any money, but I quit my job because I knew that it would take. Oh, well, I had about maybe 5 months of like I could feed myself for 5 months.
Gotcha.
Basically, is what I had. And I quit my job and I just focused on it because I knew that anything else would have been a distraction. So it takes like a real commitment, I think, to learn what you have to do, find people that you really trust, that trust in you, and then don't do it in a half, you got to go all in, like jump in. And you got to understand that the chances of failure are super high, but it doesn't matter because what you're in there for, what you will learn going through that process outweighs anything to do with the embarrassment of failing, because once you see how it can be done, whether you succeed or fail, you'll know how to do it the next time better. And so I think it's I do genuinely think if your heart's in it, you should go for it, but you're going to make sacrifices. You're going to suffer for it.
Wow. Was there a moment where it felt overall worthwhile and satisfying? Was it the release of Kung Fu Chaos? Did it take until Heavenly Sword before you guys felt like, yep, I'm glad I made the sacrifice?
I think there's lots of little wins and I think it's up and down all the way through. Like even now it's up and down and it's a fight. It's never got easy. It's never gotten easier. Like you'd think it'd get easier over time and it doesn't. It just it stays hard. I'm working as hard now as I did when I was like in my early 20s trying to prove myself. I still feel like I'm trying to prove myself, and I am, as are a lot of people in the studio. But what I'm relieved about is like sometimes I do step back and I go, well, I'm working with, as bad as it gets, I'm working with awesome people I genuinely, like to be with, and we laugh about, we have fun doing what we do, and it's tough at times, but how can you possibly complain about creating, fantasy worlds that are fun and interactive with people that are super talented and friendly and great human beings? It's like, perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
yeah.
Good lesson.
I'm sure you feel the same,
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. Cyan Art is asking, and this might be a good example of something that just isn't feasible with this budget for Hellblade, but he wants to know, he says, ask them to include a photo mode. This is essential to Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. How do you feel about a photo mode?
We're developing one, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, great.
Yeah, we are putting one in the game. It causes a hell of a lot of problems, because the camera can cut through things and, it breaks your game. But it's in there right now, and hopefully it'll stay in there. Yeah.
Awesome. There we go. Ron Seidel says, since Ninja Theory are the ones publishing the game, is there any possibility we could see Hellblade on an Xbox One in the future?
Our focus, from the start, was PlayStation 4 and PC. So we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll see.
Gotcha. So many people were asking this. How long is the game?
Okay, so I can't give you a definitive answer because until we get all the enemies mapped in and all the save points and checkpoints and everything working, I actually don't know. But what we've always said is it'll be about half the size of a typical AAA game.
Are you envisioning somewhere around like the 6-hour mark, the 2-hour mark? Do you have any sort of ballpark?
Well, I would be happy if it was if we managed to make it around the same as something like Heavenly Sword, which was considered a short game for a AAA game. But I'd say the typical action adventure game is like, I don't know, 10 to 12, maybe pushing 10, 12, 14 hours. So if we're doing, we'll be somewhere around there in the half of that mark.
Okay.
I honestly can't say we haven't set the difficulty setting there. Like, so it'll be half the size of a typical action adventure, and about half the price is what we've always been saying. So, but what I hope it is I hope it feels like there's no filler in it, right? That it feels like it's a good, worthwhile experience that will stay with you, and it doesn't feel like it's padded out. Because I think that's sort of one of the things I find frustrating about AAA games is this idea that you have to justify the price point, and so you end up, or you're encouraged to fill out the game with stuff that actually, if you wanted the pace you wanted it to be at, you probably wouldn't put it in there. I don't think we've fallen too much under that trap in the past. Hence, our games have traditionally been a bit shorter, maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think like Inside, like you mentioned before, is a great example of just being tight, no filler, make it all
yeah,
meaningful and move on. And
yeah,
no one really complains about the length of Inside. It's just seen as, oh, this is just a masterpiece.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Also, a shocking amount of people are asking about New Game Plus. Do you have thoughts on New Game Plus for Hellblade?
New Game Plus, well, like DMC Definitive Edition or
It might
something
be,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah. We don't have any plans. I mean, but that doesn't mean that nothing will happen. I mean, with DMC, I sort of think that worked out pretty well in the sense that we didn't. Yeah, okay, we had a Virgil Bloody Palace DLC plan, but in terms of a special edition, we didn't plan anything up front. And then when the game was out, we listened to what people were saying, we listened to people's feedback, and we talked amongst ourselves about what we wish we could have gotten into the game, and then we came up with a definitive edition, and we put so much stuff in there that was so positive, and it was really well received. It sold really well, actually, as well. We probably won't leave Hellblade to die, but we don't have a plan for what we would do for it.
Okay, interesting. Let's see. M. Hassan is wondering how close to the game, how close to finishing the game is the team?
We're at the point where we're pulling our hair out, but we haven't quite started stabbing ourselves in the eyeballs, right? So we're getting there.
How do you know when you're done, when you're self-publishing this thing? Can't you just keep it in the oven for as long as you want?
Oh, well, we're already late on the game, right? That's no secret, right? And so that's not good, because being late means we're also over budget, which means we're not getting, and which also means we're not getting any money into the studio, right? So, like, we can't just keep going on forever. Like, we do have constraints. What we are doing, though, what we are focusing on is getting to the end of the game, and polishing the last chunk of the game, which we are in the last chunk of the game, polishing and cramming as like hell. And then once that's done, we'll put it in front of a bunch of people, invite some people to play it, play test it, make sure that everything makes sense, crunch the hell out of that just to make sure that the experience is smooth and what we want it to be. And then we'll stick it in submission, and then Sony will tell us we'll have, whether we pass or not, and we'll probably bounce a couple of times. So there's still a bit of a road, but
yeah.
It's not this endless, vague thing. It's we know what we have to do to get it done.
Gotcha.
And we're working really hard.
And M. Hassan is also wondering, is there a genre that you guys have always wanted to sink your teeth into?
I'd love to do. I think I'd love to do horror. Like,
oh,
yeah, like I think I'd really like to do something really, really scary.
I mean, Hellblade certainly has like its disturbing elements, but you're going for just straight classic horror.
Right. But it might be too much to go from this, which does have some elements, as Ben said. There's some elements that actually feel quite a bit like a horror game. To another horror game, it might be a bit too much. So I might need a break and do something totally absurd.
Turn yourself into a family-friendly kind of guy, and then go back into the dark horror. I'd imagine it seems like you guys are interested in VR. You had a little demo, so we could see Senua in VR. And imagine horror and VR go together so well. That would be an avenue you'd be interested in.
Yeah. But it's almost too easy in VR, like horror. Like, it's almost too easy. Like, I really admire like Alex Garland, like Ex Machina.
Yeah.
I like there's this sort of area of horror which is less about jump scares and more about suspense and like growing suspense and realization and paranoia. Like that's just kind of what Kubrick does.
Yeah.
And I think a story-driven horror, like a horror thing in VR, story-driven with characters, with that kind of sensibility would feel quite different to the horror you get, right? Which is chainsaws and guts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
More Silent Hill, more that kind of vibe. I'd love to do.
Oh man, a lot of fans are excited to hear that you like Silent Hill and that you're interested in making something in that vein. Just make the sequel to PT. It's easy.
PT was awesome. It was so good. Yeah,
it's a shame.
Shame about that one.
And Gaybach wants to know rough release date.
Okay, so rough release date. I don't know the release date myself. I promise you that's true. In fact, we were scribbling on that board there just before this podcast.
You're welcome to go turn it around whenever you'd like.
Which we've covered now. But the reason I don't know is because I want to make sure we get to the end of the last level of the game, look at the whole game as a whole,
right,
and then go, how much do we need to do to make this good? And it'll definitely be this year. And hopefully not, not the back end. So it's coming. And when we're confident we know, we'll announce it.
I'd imagine you guys feel pressure to not be thrown into the mix of the big holiday releases. Is that a big discussion?
Yeah. So that can be dangerous for a game like ours, which is a smaller game. We don't have a massive marketing budget. So we just have to make sure we're not coming out at the same time as Halo or whatever.
Right. The natural competition to Hellblade, Halo.
Yeah. Even if it isn't, it's like all the attention goes on a certain game for that week or month, and you're just lost in there. So yeah, we've got to be careful when we release it. It's hard to say. I was hoping we could announce something soon, very soon, but or even recently. But just want to make sure we don't announce a date and then screw it up.
Sure. Yeah, totally understandable. Well, hey, that's it for questions. But is there anything else you wanted to say? Anything else to get off your chest?
No, I think I'm just grateful to you guys for your coverage. Because you guys are massive in terms of readership, and you could have picked any one of the upcoming big AAA games, and to pick out of the blue, to our surprise, a game like ours. I think it shows a real love for responsibility, or finding the rough in the diamond, or the diamond in the rough, rather.
The old rough in the diamond.
It's really appreciated.
Yeah, well, I hope you realize you have an interesting story. This game definitely has an interesting story around the development, and so yeah, it's our pleasure to share it, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for Skyping in and answering the fan questions. I'm sure they all appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. Full episodes air every Thursday, and they feature Game Informer editors sitting around talking about the biggest reviews, previews. We talk about exclusive impressions of Game Informer's cover stories. We have long-form developer interviews, everything that's great in gaming. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.